I want to thank everyone for being here today. Also want to thank our sponsor, Solenis, who is making our webinar series available for free. So we're very thankful for them for their contributions to our efforts. Also want to thank Miklos Valdez for carving out time to be here today. A little bit about Miklos. Miklos is the executive director of the Councilman-Hunsaker CHAMP Councilman-Hunsaker Aquatic Management Program. Um, he is definitely, I don't want to say rising star because you're well established, but he is definitely one of the leaders and experts in pool operations across the country. Miklos, I've worked with Miklos for several years now. And in addition to being just a really great guy, he is also a stellar aquatics professional with a variety of experiences across the industry, from Texas to his work with Councilman-Hunsaker. He also is one of our CMAHC ambassadors and was on the technical review committee for the fourth edition MAC and led technical review committee efforts for the fifth edition MAC and continues to be a very valued resource and volunteer for CMAG. So, with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Miklos. We're discussing the grand issues of every summer, all the problems that we have. There will be an opportunity after the presentation to interact. If you have questions, please toss them in chat. Um, we have a small group, so if we need to do some verbal follow up, we can. We have that ability. But for now, just throw them in chat, and we'll get to them at the end of his presentation. With that being said, Miklos, all yours, my friend.
Thanks. Thank you for that intro, Dewey. It's way too much. My name is Miklos Valdez. I go by Mick. So if you ever see me around, Miklos is quite a mouthful. So Mick is totally fine. I am the operations studio director at Councilman-Hunsaker. If you want to take a picture with your phone, that QR code right there, that'll take you to a website where you can get all my contact info. If you want to write down my email or my phone number, feel free to do so as well. And if you want a copy of this, I don't know if we can make it available on the CMAC website, but feel free to email me, and more than happy to send you a copy of this presentation. I've got a few things that I put together that I wanted to talk about and remind operators of, since we're about halfway through the summer season. Some things you probably already know. You might find something new out of here. You may not. It might spark another question, and that's totally fine too. Dewey had asked, hey, how about we do just kind of a open question and answer session? And I said, great. I love having questions that I don't know ahead of time fired at me. So please feel free to make me struggle here and give me your best. So I want to talk about a few things that I've seen lately, either come out in the news or we've had some recent issues with, or that we've seen. And first thing I'm going to go over is breastfeeding at the pool. And this is was from a recently released FAQ by the CMAC team, which I thought was a great document, one that was really needed in the industry. And so if you haven't seen this, if you search CMAC breastfeeding at aquatic venues, I think this is on the CMAC website. If you go to the CMAC LinkedIn page, you can find it there. But a great FAQ if you are continuing to have battles with your constituents, or sometimes if you're in a city or a larger organization, you may be having battles with your leadership about what you can and cannot allow when it comes to breastfeeding at aquatic venues. So go over some of the main points. And this is one that if we want to stop and have a little discussion about, usually people have some interesting takes. And so would love to do that. But overall, breastfeeding is allowed at all aquatic venues. Basically, if you want to think about it from a, what's the definition that I need to go by? Infants can be breastfed anywhere that the public is allowed to be. So that's in locker rooms, that's out on the pool deck, that's in the pool, that's in line to the concession stand. Is that in the pump room? No, because that's not where the public's allowed to be. But anywhere else, they are absolutely allowed to breastfeed. In the past, we usually get questions about, well, we don't allow food and drink in the pool. Isn't breast milk food or drink? And you could argue one way or another, but really what this FAQ is saying and what sounds like the laws are saying is that breast milk is not equivalent to food or drink. People are allowed to breastfeed in the pool or on the side of the pool. Breast milk is not a hazard or it's not really something we need to worry about contaminating the pool. And then in the same vein, we also don't really need to worry about babies being exposed to pool water while they're breastfeeding. The hazard there is just super minimal. I've yet seen anyone breastfeed underwater. That would be quite a feat and might be hazardous. But other than that, as long as they're on top of the water, should be totally fine. This is a picture of that FAQ. Please go ahead and download that when you get a minute. It has a lot of great information. Does anybody have any questions about breastfeeding in and around pools? I have a feeling since we have a small group, it's probably preaching to the choir a little bit. And I can't see the chat, so Dewey, I'm going to rely on you for that.
I don't see any hands raised.
All right, then we'll move on. Next thing I want to talk about is chemical controller interlocks. I've been pleasantly surprised to not see a ton of news articles about chemical releases at pools. Usually by this time, we've seen at least 2 or 3 major incidents where something has happened, where pools have had to shut down, people have gone to the hospital because of some sort of off-gassing. I want to take this opportunity, and I really take every opportunity that I possibly can, to talk about chemical controller interlocks. If you're not 100% sure what a chemical controller interlock is, or you're not really sure how to explain it to your team, this video done by the American Chemistry Council is an excellent, excellent explanation of what chemical controller interlocks are, why they're a necessary safety item, what happens if they fail, and how to do testing, how that all works. It's a wonderful video. I want to say it's about like 10 minutes long, maybe even slightly longer. So if you're looking for something to fill some time in a upcoming in-service, this is also an excellent, excellent video to show your team so they are aware and they're knowledgeable about that issue. The MAC requires that we test chemical controller interlocks at least once monthly. And that test needs to be documented as you would document any other chemical test or any other safety check in your facility. Make sure you're testing those monthly, make sure you're documenting it. What we often find when we do risk evaluations or site visits at facilities around the country is this is still, for the most part, not being done. I'd say maybe 5% of the facilities that we go to have been keeping up with these monthly interlock tests. But these are critical to make sure that if there is an issue, that your chemical controller is not going to continue feeding when you've lost flow. If you're not familiar with what happens is the acid and chlorine mixture starts to off-gas within the pipe. And once that flow is resumed, that gas gets pushed out into the pool area. If there's people in and around that area, that can be a serious issue. And we've had several instances with people having to go to the hospital with having severe lung damage and irritation, and it's a pretty tough thing to go through. And down here, 57351411, which is possibly the longest code number that we have in the MAC. I would love verification on that. I want to know what the longest one is. But this talks about the monthly challenge testing. Unless your manufacturer says it needs to be done in a different time frame, we want to do monthly testing. Talks about how to do that. And if you need more information, check your chemical controller manual and watch this video. That's an excellent video for chemical controller interlocks. And we're not going to watch the video because maybe if we have time at the end. Next one is just talking about testing pool water. We get in a groove during the summer. We've got a lot going on. We're doing lifeguard schedules. We've got cash handling issues. We've got concessions issues. We've got birthday parties coming in. There's a lot that goes on, and at some point things can start to slip through the cracks. One of the things that we don't want slipping through those cracks are testing our pool water. So if you've ever wondered, what is the standard? What do I need to be shooting for? One is to look at your local code. That's going to be the minimum standard of what you need to test your pool water at. But if you want to go above and beyond, if you want to see what the MAC says, here you go. It's in 574, and this talks about water sample collection and testing. Actually, this came from a conversation I had with Sarah yesterday when I was asking her what sort of things she's seen this summer. And she had a question from some of her students and from some of her colleagues about, what is the standard for water testing? And especially if you're a health official coming in a water test, what does that look like? So I told her I'd do some research and we'd talk about it. So the MAC says that we want to sample from the sample port at the chemical controller. That's going to be our best sample for what's going on in the entirety of the pool area. But we also want to take samples from the pool side as well, at least once daily. If you can do it more than once a day, that's even better. Not only do we want to have that representative sample from the chemical controller, but we also want to take samples from around the pool area, make sure we don't have any dead spots, make sure our flow systems are operating correctly, and we're not, we're not leaving issues out there and not, correcting them or paying attention to them. So we want to check those poolside at least once daily. Want to take samples from our chemical controller as well. And then this was interesting. This is something that I hadn't picked out of the MAC before. We want to rotate around the shallow end of the pool as we're taking when we're taking those poolside tests. So maybe in the morning you take it from one side. If you're going to do like a midday test, which you should. So what the MAC also asks is for that if you're going to do like a single daily bulk water sample, that be taken midday in your operations. So maybe we do a test on one side, maybe we do a midday test in the middle, and then we do a test at the end of the day from the other side, or maybe we can break it up into more sections, whatever that looks like at your pool. But make sure you're rotating around the shallow end, and make sure you're taking at least one deep end sample at least once a week. And when you're testing, make sure you're avoiding those return lines. You're going down at least 18 inches into the water, and you're taking that test according to all those other protocols. Any questions here or on anything so far? All right. Next, I want to talk a little bit about zone evaluations and testing. This is something that I think has become or has been moved to the forefront of our industry, at least in the past couple of years, and is it's not going to go away. And we need more people doing these tests. We need more information about this. More operators need to be doing this so that they are more comfortable with doing zone evaluation testing. We just need this being done more throughout the industry. If you ever have any questions about how to do these tests, please refer back to the Model Aquatic Health Code. You can refer back to your lifeguard certifying body, American Red Cross, Ellis and Associates, Starguard. They all have great collateral. YMCA, they all have great collateral with how to conduct these zone evaluations and testing. If we're going to look at just at least the minimal test for this, the Model Aquatic Health Code has at least the basics of what we need to be doing for this test, and that's to make sure that lifeguards can view their entire area or their zone, and they can reach the furthest extent of their zone within 20 seconds. And I think most certifying bodies would tell you that the furthest extent also means furthest and deepest. So if it's a diving well, you want to get to the furthest part of that zone within 20 seconds, and which also means getting to that furthest point and getting down to the bottom of the pool and being able to, grab somebody within that 20 seconds. If you haven't done this time test, I highly, highly recommend that you do this. At Counsilman-Hunsaker, we've helped several facilities do these testings. We've done them ourselves at facilities. And one of the things that I've noticed throughout several of our tests, and actually I just had an example of this with a client recently, is that lane lines, safety lines, demarcation, floats, anything like that that's in the water that your lifeguard may have to swim around or over can really make this test difficult. So if you haven't tested with your lifeguards swimming over lane lines or swimming over these safety lines and making sure that they can meet this 20-second standard, I highly recommend that you do this. This should be documented. There's documenting procedures again with your certifying body, but if you need some help, give me a call. Happy to help. You want to make sure you're identifying the type of stand that you're doing this test with. Is it a roving stand? Is it elevated? Is it ground level? What are the responsibilities of that stand? What is the zone of surveillance that they're looking at? Are there any additional things that they need to pay attention to? What are some of the issues that they need to pay attention to while they're at that stand? All those things should be part of that zone definition and the description of that zone, and it should really be in that staffing plan as well. So make sure you're doing these. Again, there are additional evaluations that you can do and testing protocols that you can do. So check with your certifying body for those additional test methods. When you're testing your zone of surveillance, you're basically looking to make sure that your lifeguard can see everything in their zone. So you want to put your test items on the far side of any obstructions. If there's a mushroom feature, or there's a tot slide, or maybe you've got a drop slide and the lifeguard needs to look around that to see a part of the pool. Try to strategically place some of these items to make sure that you are verifying your lifeguards can see all areas of the pool. This way you can document that you've done this and that you've shown that lifeguards are able to see their entire pool area and their entire zone and around any obstructions. When you're doing these tests, we use devices called the Angels devices. These are by a company called Aquatic. We like using them because they're all uniform, and we like the design. But you can use shadows, you can use dummies, you can use whatever you have on hand to do these tests. Really, we want to get people doing it. So do it however you can. But if you can afford to buy extra shadows and extra actual testing equipment to do these zone evaluations, highly recommend that you do. This is another thing that came up recently with some of our evaluations, and so wanted to put that reminder out there. We've got new operators all the time. We forget things even if we've been operators for a long time. And so wanted to take a moment to talk about ages and at what ages are people allowed to lifeguard, and what are they allowed to do when they're lifeguarding at different ages under the age of 18. Most of us probably know that at 15 years old, you can start lifeguarding, but you've got a lot of things that you have to work around if you're hiring 15-year-olds and you're employing them. So two main things I wanted to talk about. One is I wanted to remind that if you are hiring 15-year-olds, they cannot dispatch on water slides. Hopefully I didn't throw a wrench into anybody's staffing plan that they've been working with over the summer, but this is federal law, so you really don't want to be on the wrong side of this. Make sure that you don't have any 15-year-olds dispatching on your water slides. However, what they can do is work in that splashdown area. That is totally fine, but they just cannot dispatch. Also, if they're under the age of 16, they can't work in any chemical storage areas, so don't have them go into the chemical room and yank out, acid carboys or chlorine carboys. They can't use any power-driven machinery. They can use small hand tools, things like that, totally fine, but no table saws, things like that. They can't cook with an open flame. So if you have any that are working in your concessions area or might be, keep that in mind. They can't use scaffolding. However, your normal ladders and your lifeguard stands do not count as scaffolding. They can absolutely do that, but make sure they're trained to use ladders and use lifeguard stands. yes, there is a training for using ladders at your facility. Look in OSHA standards, and you will find plenty of ladder safety training that if you use ladders in and around your facility, you should absolutely train your team utilizing. If they're under 16, they also can't work in freezers, and they have a lot of prohibitions around the hours that they can work. That, I believe, opens up quite a bit over the summer. However, during the school year, there's a lot of times that they can't work, and you've got time restrictions. So make sure you're paying attention to those and you're not on the wrong side of that. If you need to refer back to a fact sheet, this fact sheet number 60, if you just search fact sheet number 60, lifeguard labor laws, this should pop up. This is a great FAQ for what lifeguards can and can't do at 15, 16, and 17. Once they turn 18, they're an adult and you're good to go. Lastly, I wanted to talk about checking your drains. I know this sounds basic. I know you're saying, Mick, we already know this. We know that our drains need to be VGBA compliant. But I wanted to bring this up because as I was doing some searching around, I found a pool that was recently shut down in the Chicagoland area because during their health inspection, they found that their hardware for their drain cover was missing. And so the health department shut them down until that could be fixed. I think they got it fixed in a day. Wasn't a huge deal. However, if you want to avoid a potential shutdown, please make sure you're checking your drain covers on a daily basis. Make sure they're properly fixed and make sure you have all the hardware in place. Check those daily, document those checks. It's not only going to help to make sure that you don't get shut down, but also is going to help to make sure that your facility is as safe as possible and that the VGB compliant drain covers are operating as they're supposed to be. I would highly recommend having at least one backup cover. I know they can be expensive and it's not in everyone's budget to be able to have multiple backups, and that's totally fine. But I suggest at least having one backup cover just in case something happens. When your covers get broken, you have some missing hardware, you can easily replace that and you don't have to have any shutdown time. Otherwise, if you have any missing hardware, if that cover is broken or damaged, your pool really needs to be shut down until that can be corrected. So make sure those are part of your daily safety checks and documentation. Any questions here?
Miklos, not a question on my part, but just if I can add something very quickly before we move on. Also, make sure you've got the documentation. We see a lot of times where a vendor will come in that maybe is a more residential-based vendor, and they'll change your drains out because you've asked them to, and they're proper drains, all that fun stuff, but they throw the documentation away. So yeah, make sure you've got that documentation on file. And also stainless steel grates too. Don't forget that, and oftentimes manufacturers, the grates may not expire, but they require the screws to be changed out. For example, Paddock requires those to be changed out every 7 years.
Great point. Another great reason to keep that documentation, it's an easy way when your health department comes by to say, yep, these are drain covers, this is the documentation, these are the sizes, blah, blah, blah. But most of the documentation now also has a space where you can write in when that cover was installed. Because once they are installed, then you do have a expiration date on most of them, and you can write in that installation date so that you know when it needs to be changed out, or when that hardware maybe potentially needs to be changed out. And you've got all that documentation ready to go to show your health department or anybody that needs to see it. Makes it a whole lot easier than having to dive down to the bottom of the pool to check that drain cover in the deep end.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those were some of the things that I wanted to bring up and just kind of have as some reminders. Hopefully that's helped clear up some potential operating issues. But if you have any burning questions, anything that you're dealing with right now that you'd like to bring up, please do so. We'd love to see how we can help and maybe give you some things to look at.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, I can put that in chat, or we're a small group today. You can raise your hand and ask in person. That'd be perfectly fine as well. Miklos, I know we've had a decline, as you mentioned, in accidental chemical releases. Just from your perspective, right, what you've seen, how big of a decline have you noticed from years past?
As I said, I think probably, and this is total anecdotally,
Of course.
we don't keep, we haven't kept like records of chemical release news articles or anything, but to my recollection, we usually see at least 2 to 3 by July, August, at least, articles that either get sent to me or that if I do a Google search, there's at least 2 or 3 by this part of the season that have made big news. Like I said, I haven't seen any, so that is really reassuring. I hope that a lot more operators are aware of the need to do challenge testing. Hopefully operators are not bypassing those interlocks as much as they used to in the past. I know we've got a lot of CPO instructors on the councilman team, and all of us really try to talk about making sure you don't bypass those interlocks and that you're allowing those systems to work so that you don't run into these issues. I would hope that other instructors and other health officials and stuff are doing the same thing, and hopefully it's starting to work, because this is not something that happens often, but when it does happen, can be a very serious issue.
Yeah, and the other thing too is we don't know the long-term effects, right? To my knowledge, we've had lots of hospitalizations, but no one has died yet from an accidental chemical release at a pool. But we don't know, because we're not tracking these folks long term, right? We don't know beyond discharge what the impacts are with respiratory function, the development of diseases like I'm just blanking on the word, but respiratory issues, right? Asthma related issues, other scarring of the lungs. We don't know these things, and some of these things a healthy 10-year-old might be able to adapt to, but when they hit 40, 50, they may become larger issues. So I'm glad to hear that there is, at least anecdotally, a reduction in that, right?
Yeah.
What are some really wild things that you've seen so far that's just like mind blown that this has happened?
That's a great question. I liked the post that you did yesterday. I've seen that a few times.
Yeah.
So just putting chlorine pucks in the bottom of the pool, or as you had posted, putting them on the gutter grates so that they get fed into the system. Ingenious. Not knocking it from a hey, you're getting chlorine into that system, great. But from a safety standpoint, please don't do those things. One, you should never be hand feeding chemical while there's people in the pool, period. So if that is common practice for y'all, please stop doing that. Do not hand feed chemical at all. Any chemical, doesn't matter how inert you think it is, do not hand feed chemical while there are people in the pool. And don't just place pucks and stuff at the bottom of your pool or in your surge tank or in the or on your gutter grating. I can't say for certain, but it's probably not great for the bottom of your pool. It's probably not great for your gutter system. That's not how those chemicals were intended to be introduced, and is also a safety hazard for anybody that comes around to that puck. We do have a couple of questions, looks like. So one from Andrew says, are we seeing people checking and documenting the testing of their SVRS systems? Has to remind people to do this a lot. That's a great point. I actually, in my work, see very few SVRS systems. So it's not something that I'm having to remind people a lot, but that's a great point, is to make sure you're documenting the testing, at least according to the manufacturer recommendations. I can't remember offhand if the Model Aquatic Health Code has standard for testing SVRS systems, but definitely check with your documentation for that system and see what the manufacturer suggests at a minimum, and then see what your local health code and what the MAC suggests as well. That's a great point. That is a safety critical system that needs to be tested often and documented. Lydia asks, any tips for getting an operator to follow flow rate requirements? There's one facility who nearly always has way too high flow rates, then they lower it back down. And she explains that it can negatively affect their filters, and it's a reoccurring issue. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, and as consultants, we do the same thing, and as health department officials, I'm sure you do the same thing. You can try to give them as much information as you can and kind of lay it out for them, but at the end of the day, they've got to take that information and actually do something with it. One thing I would do is it's one thing to say, if you run your flow rates too high, it can tear up your filtration systems. But it's another thing to actually show them what are some of the things that can happen, and to show them what their filtration systems are rated to handle. In some cases, those filtration systems might be oversized slightly, and so a slight increase in their flow rates may not affect their filter systems, but it may have an effect on other systems. But being able to show them that, hey, your filter filters at this, feet per second, and you don't have the filter capacity to run at this flow rate. That is a very clear, indication to somebody that, hey, you need to ramp this down. And it gets laid out pretty plainly for them. I think showing them the actual numbers and showing them what can actually happen to their filter and to the sand, and can show that, hey, if you continue to do this, you might need to replace your sand, in 2 years versus 7 years. You might have, run into water quality issues later on. All these other things that could happen with running those flow rates too high. We have another question. We've been seeing so many operators change out their pumps with built-in SVR systems to pumps without built-in SVR systems. Come across this in several occasions, which is scary. Are we seeing this? I guess, Ashley, I have a follow-up question to that. So are they removing those pumps with built-in SVRS systems and not replacing the system? Oh. Well, there's really no way around that. Yeah, I would have them close immediately as well. Yeah, I don't know why they would do that, other than that they just don't know what that system is, and they don't think that they have to have it. That is a poor decision on their part and on the pool contractor part. So, not sure why that's happening. That's not a small issue.
No, and Miklos, just off the cuff here, what's your hot take? And there's a couple of manufacturers there, we won't mention them, that have built-in SVRS for their smaller pumps, right? These are 2.7 total horsepower or less. What's your hot take on those? Have you found in your audits and assessments for those to actually work? Or would you still recommend a separate SVRS in those situations where they have a single main drain or the drains are too close?
This is one area that, I will be honest, I do not have a whole lot of expertise in. That would be something I'd have to research. Okay. Like I said, I don't come across them as often, and so I just haven't had to be as knowledgeable about those SVRS systems. But that is a great question, and I'd be happy to do some research and kind of see what we've found, and if our engineers have found anything kind of related to it. I guess I'm sure sounds like you're asking because you've had some experience.
Well, yeah, I've had one brand, the beige pump, that I was actually, it was an SVRS, like a 2 horsepower. I was actually able to bypass the SVRS by slowly closing the main drain, and it didn't trigger. So, but that was one person with one pump, right? So that's why I was curious if y'all have seen that in your audits.
I've not. But that is something, like I said, I can research and see if anybody else has.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear that.
I'm always interested to hear how people are doing with staffing and with training. So would love to hear any comments about how staffing has gone this summer. Are you getting worried towards the end of the summer? That's the beginning and the end is always, a big worry. July usually kind of handles itself, but has anyone been fully staffed this summer and it's been just going amazing? And if you are, what have you done? How did you get fully staffed? We'd love to know the secret sauce.
Well, I can chime in on this. So, for those that aren't aware, CMAC, our roles are all part-time, right? So we all have full-time gigs on top of that. For me, I'm the assistant aquatic superintendent for Williamson County, Tennessee Parks and Rec, where we have 10 bodies of water. We were 95% staffed before Memorial Day, and we were fully staffed the week after Memorial Day.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, we've had no closures. We've had no major times where we've had to restrict use. We've had all of our minimum staffing, where we've been really, really fortunate. I think on our end, right, we've done some interesting things pay wise, specifically on those hard to staff times where there's a massive pay differential. And the other is we don't charge our staff for training. As part of the recruitment process, we train 100% at our cost. It's just built into the budget. It's just an expense that we have. And that's helped even with our base pay being slightly lower than the average market. Um, so that's one thing we've done that's been really, really good. And we also support with a proper structure, right? So we're not trying to run skin of our teeth on anything. We don't do any single guard facilities. All of our splash parks have 5, 6 attendants on at all times. And we're trying to create healthy, positive environments with several layers of accountability and responsibility to where no one is overwhelmed. Um, that's been part of our successes.
That's excellent. Let me ask you, because we get this question a lot. When you pay for training, before they are hired, do you have them do any swim qualification to see if they're going to make it through the training, or are you hiring based on kind of aptitude and soft skills somewhat, and trying to find those people that are going to be good lifeguards and then train them to be good lifeguards?
Yeah, that's our focus. And then, we do that, then put them through the class. So we do 0 in water work before the first day of training. Our drop rate so far. So right now we have on staff roughly 200 lifeguards. Our training class drop rate, which largely our classes are only for staff. We've had a few community participants, but 80% of our classes are staff. We've only had a 10% drop rate in our classes based on the prereqs.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Because I know that is one of the issues that a lot have seen traditionally, and we still hear about in some areas where the swimming skills have really dropped off, and they're getting a lot of applicants that just don't have the prerequisite swimming skills to be able to make it through the class.
Yeah. I can see that. All right. Anybody have any other questions? Go ahead, Miklos.
I was just going to say we've got some good comments in the chat about this SBRS issue. A question was asked, you know, when pools are closed because they've removed an SVRS system. Question was asked, how do they reopen? Do they need an engineer to sign off on the hydraulics that it meets VGBA requirements? I would imagine so. I think Andrew gave a yup, but I can't remember if it was that they have to close immediately or if it was in relation to the VGBA requirements. Sarah, I'll let you chime in here in a second. And then we had another comment that typically when you're replacing equipment, it needs to be replaced like for like. If it's not being replaced like for like, it does need to go to the health department for review. That's the case in a lot of jurisdictions. And so make sure if you are doing equipment replacement that you are following your local codes when doing that. If you're not replacing like to like, in a lot of cases, you do need to alert the health department and make sure that they check off on those replacements. Sarah, you had some more comments?
Yeah, this goes along with the SVRS comment and hydraulics. I think anytime that hydraulics are changed in the pool, so say you have a return inlet that's leaking and you decide to bypass that return inlet, that changes the section on your facility because you're bypassing maybe a return inlet or something. So that needs to be verified that your drain covers still meet that VGBA requirement, because if not, then you have more section than you may than you're supposed to on those VGBA drains or covers or outlets, your sofas. So just if you're changing any of your hydraulics, just make sure that your VGBA stuff still meets the requirements, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Great comment.
So Miklos, we're coming to the end of our time today. You know, you've gone over lots of interesting problems that you've seen this summer already. Some improvements, some just kind of this is still an issue. But we're functionally halfway plus through the summer for many areas of the country. I know in Tennessee, school's starting in 2 weeks, right? What advice do you have for our pool operators once we get to this back half, right? So we're halfway through, halfway plus through. We're getting to kind of the hard times now, right? Mm-hmm. What advice do you have for operators?
Yeah, so a lot of times right now we're looking at a lot of staff going to school, going to college, hours being reduced. Hopefully you've been planning for that. And a lot of facilities will cut hours at the facility, go to weekends only, or like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or maybe a few hours during the week and then weekends. However you end up doing that, my main comment would be do not lower your lifeguarding standards because you have fewer lifeguards. Try to make, try to make changes in the hours of operation. Try to make changes in your schedule. Close bodies of water, close sections of the pool if you need to. If you're closing sections, there's other things you need to do to make sure that you're doing that in a safe manner. But don't just start lifeguarding with 1 or 2 lifeguards in an area or a pool that you would have normally had, 5 lifeguards on. Sometimes because of beta load that may make sense, but you'll know that if you've done your zone evaluations, and you can check back on those. You can use those to help you reorganize staffing. But make sure you're not putting your guards in a losing situation just because you're having staff leave. Try to do your pre-planning for it and make sure that you're going to be adequately covered. And if you need help, reach out to us, reach out to others in the industry, reach out to your peers, and get some help. Sometimes it just takes some thinking through, and you can come up with a good way of operating. You might just need another set of eyes on it. Maybe there are some tough choices that need to be made, and you can have somebody help you put together that argument to upper management to make sure that they listen and that they understand the risks. But what you don't want to do is put your staff in a situation where they're going to have a tough time doing the job that you've hired them to do. Because as we've all seen, when our team members feel like they've been hung out to dry, that's when they end up not coming back the next year.
Yeah, agreed.
But from a positive standpoint, and from a end of the season, looking forward to next season, now is a great time. Hopefully things have been running smoothly. You got all the kinks worked out in the beginning weeks of the summer. Hopefully now's the time where you're running smoothly, and you can start taking stock of some of the data that you've gathered over the summer. Review your incident reports. Look for areas where you've had common incidents. Track those. If you have the time or you have the team members to actually tabulate that, put that into a spreadsheet so you can analyze it a little bit easier, highly recommend doing that. Take a look at your financial information. See where where programs have been successful, or maybe where you've lost money on programs. Concessions is another one. Look for your cost for services, and make sure that everything's lining up and that you've been making money on your concessions and you haven't been spending more than you've been bringing in. Sounds simple, sounds easy, but we routinely come across facilities that do not do that and have been operating at a loss for years and years. So now's the time, as things start to kind of calm down a little bit. Start looking at your programs, start looking at your finances, start putting together an end of the year summary. If you do that, it's a great way to promote your facility and your department to your higher ups or to city council. It can really help with when it comes to budget time, or when you're making arguments for new systems or new equipment, to have that data all ready to go. If you need some help with coming up with some of the things you should be tracking, KPIs, what that end of the year report might look like, again, feel free to reach out. Happy to share some of the stuff that I've done or some of the stuff that I've seen. Reach out to your colleagues or anybody on this call. Everyone does things slightly differently, but it's always great to get other opinions and other eyes on what you want to do, to make sure that you're thinking through all of your operational aspects. So now's a great time to do that, and think about how you're gonna, if you do need to close up for the winter, and you're gonna be winterizing things, make sure you've got an action plan for that. You know how that's gonna happen. You got a timetable, and if you're gonna outsource it, if you haven't put that contract together yet, now's a good time to do that because it might take a little while. And if you winterize on your own, God bless you, because that was something I never wanted to do.
No, it's never fun. Just kind of a shameless promotion here, right? If you are winterizing, you can go to CMAHC.org and scroll down on the left-hand side of the page till you find aquatic resources. And there is a evergreen sheet on winterization that Councilman Hunt actually helped create with CMAHC. So that would be a great resource. So we're about 10 after the hour. I know, Miklos, I'll be respectful of your time as well as everyone else's. I want to thank everyone for attending today. A special thank you to Miklos for giving this presentation and lending his expertise. Just as a reminder, our webinars are sponsored by Solenis, so they are free. We do offer CEUs. That's for a minimal cost. But we'll have our next two webinars for the year. Will be one in September, where we're bringing in and discussing critical incident stress among lifeguards. And then we're looking forward to that one. And also in December, we're having Conan Campbell with Prominent come in. For that particular webinar, we're talking about what do you need to do over winter. Because by the time you start thinking about startup in March, you've already missed several key metrics. So we're looking forward to those experts. Again, thank you, Miklos, thank you, Solenis, and thank you for your care to be here, your concern to learn, and for the efforts you keep in keeping our bathers safe and healthy throughout the country.
Louis, just a quick reminder that the CEUs are free for CMAHC members.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. With that being said, we have a massive heat dome. Everybody stay cool, drink plenty of water, watch those guards. And with that being said, y'all have a great rest of the summer.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
You
Thanks,
too.
everyone. Have a good day.